Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're approaching things a bit differently, still looking at knowledge you've shared with us, our listener.
Yeah.
But this time, it's a collection of personal accounts, stories from people working those, quiet late-night shifts, experiences that are really unsettling, sometimes downright terrifying, things that don't have easy explanations. So today, we're going to treat these accounts as our source material. We're basically just going to tell some of these stories, look at the common threads, that shared feeling of, vulnerability and the unknown.
Yeah, and what's really compelling about these, I think, is how they tap into some very fundamental human anxieties. When you combine that isolation with the deep quiet of the night, even everyday things can start to feel sinister. These accounts, they really give us a window into how that environment can sort of warp your perception, create this profound sense of unease.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right in. This first account is pulled from the description of a 911 call. Okay, so picture this.
Right.
Someone's working totally alone at a place called Sheldon's on 19th Street. Middle of the night, empty. They look up, maybe down an aisle, and spot a figure about 30 feet away.
Okay.
But yeah, this wasn't just a customer or anything. This person was wearing a mask, covered in blood. And they weren't, doing anything. No shouting, no sudden movements. Just looking, standing there, staring.
That silent, unresponsive observation, it's something you see popping up again and again in these kinds of unsettling encounters. The ambiguity, that's often way more terrifying than a clear, obvious threat. You're faced with something that's just deeply wrong. The mask, the blood, but the lack of action. It forces your own mind to fill in the blanks, and that's almost always worse.
Right. And here's the detail in this one that just ramps up the terror. The worker said every single time they moved, even a little bit, just shifted their weight. The figure moved closer, like a creeping, silent advance tied directly to the victim's own movements.
That feeling of being tracked,
Trapped.
There's no clear way out.
Yeah, it creates this awful dynamic where your natural instinct, maybe to flinch or just reposition yourself, actually brings the threat nearer. It's a kind of psychological pressure, isn't it? Your own fight or flight is basically turned against you by this person's strange, almost rule-based behavior. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Another kind of unsettling encounter, this one involving some really strange interaction and then, someone just vanishing. This story comes from someone working the late shift at a CVS pharmacy, 9 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. They said it was usually a pretty easy job, just stocking, tidying up. So one night, they're at the front counter working on the computer, and suddenly a man is just there, right beside them, silent, way too close. When the worker finally notices him, he's just got this, the account calls it a psychotic little grin.
Oof. Yeah, that sudden, silent appearance, especially in a space you think is safe, like behind a counter, that immediately shatters your sense of security. And that specific description, that grin, it communicates some kind of intent, but it's twisted, unpredictable. That's much scarier than just, say, anger.
Totally. And it gets weirder. The worker asks, can I help you? He just shakes his head, no.
Yeah.
Then he asks a really pointed question. Is anyone else working? Huge red flag, right? So the worker, thinking fast, lies, says, yeah, manager and 3 others are here.
Smart move.
And the guy's smile just gets wider. He leans in and whispers, almost too quiet to even hear, just one word, wire. The worker said they were just shaking, couldn't even look at him, tried to edit, I got to get back to work. And when they looked up, maybe, 10 seconds later, he was just gone, vanished. No sound, no sign of him. The account really stresses how fast he must have moved to just disappear like that.
And there's another really unsettling element we see quite a bit in these night shift stories. This sudden, inexplicable disappearance. It's completely disorienting. Your brain just struggles, right? How can someone who is physically right there suddenly be gone? Especially inside a store. It leaves you questioning everything what you saw, your own mind, on top of the fear you already felt.
And believe it or not, this CVS story, it wasn't even over. Later that same night, maybe 1:45 a.m., the worker's getting ready to close up, doing final tasks near the front door, turning off lights, bending down, and they see a head peering out from an aisle end cap. They freeze, look back properly, nothing, try to shake it off, nerves, but then it comes back. The same man crawls out of the aisle on his hands and knees, and this time, not silent. He knew he'd been seen. And he just started laughing hysterically.
Wow. Okay, that's a major escalation. The return of the figure, but this complete shift in behavior from silent observer to, crawling menace with hysterical laughter. It moves beyond just psychological creepiness into something overt, almost performative terror. And that shift itself, that sudden change, might be even more disturbing than a straightforward attack because it feels so deliberate, so alien.
Yeah. The worker just ran, didn't even think, bolted out the front door, fumbling with her phone, just violently dialing 911 out in the parking lot. Police came. They searched the whole store, top to bottom, found no man inside.
Yeah.
But they did find his clothes in the aisle he'd crawled out of. And the source material just leaves it there. The clothes, but no person.
That detail, the clothes, it adds this layer of enduring mystery, doesn't it? It kind of validates the worker's story. Something was definitely there. But the lack of a body connected to those clothes, it shifts it from, say, a near assault into this unresolved, deeply strange event. It's the physical proof without the person it implies. Bizarre.
Okay, let's move to a different kind of unsettling presence. One that appears vulnerable, but feels profoundly wrong. This story is from someone working at a Jack in the Box drive-thru, alone. Friday night shift, like 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. So they're alone, and this little girl, maybe 10 years old, she just walks up to the drive-thru window. Her clothes are described as tattered, dirty, dirt on her face, in her hair, looking maybe lost.
Yeah, encounters with figures who seem vulnerable like children, but in totally inappropriate contexts, like a drive-thru at 2 a.m., they're instinctively unsettling. There's this immediate mismatch, between what you expect and what you're seeing. Your brain's trying to process why this child is alone and dirty right there, and that confusion just primes you for unease.
Exactly. So the worker opens the window, obviously concerned, asks her, "Are you all right?" And she just responds, flat tone, with the exact same question back, "Are you all right?" The worker's a bit thrown, asks, "What are you doing?" And again, she just mimics, "What are you doing?"
That echolalia, the mirroring of speech, especially combined with that sort of blank effect you described, deeply unnerving. It just strips away normal human interaction, doesn't it? Replaces it with something that sounds like language but feels completely devoid of meaning or connection. It feels mechanical, not human.
Yeah, I put the worker instantly on edge. Felt like maybe it was a prank, or worse, a setup. Like maybe adults were hiding nearby in the dark parking lot. They looked around, couldn't see anyone, just dark, empty. So they closed the window, totally creeped out. Tried to ignore it and get back to work.
Understandable.
But maybe 5 minutes later, they hear tapping on the window. They turn back, and the little girl is there again. This time, her face is pressed right up against the glass, just that same blank stare. They open the window again, maybe frustrated now, ask her what she wants. No words this time. Instead, she takes a fork out of her pocket, holds it up, starts tapping it on the glass. Here's the really specific, chilling detail from the source. 3 of the times, the points on the fork were broken off, leaving just one sharp point sticking out.
Oh, wow. Okay, the introduction of a physical object, especially one that's been modified like that, into a potential weapon that completely transforms the encounter. It goes from being psychologically unsettling, creepy, to something explicitly menacing. It grounds that abstract fear in a tangible, even if small, physical threat.
Totally. The worker just yelled something like, "I'm calling the cops." And the girl just smiled, turned, and ran off into the dark, never seen again. It just leaves you with that image, right? Wow. The blank-faced kid with the one-pronged fork. We also got accounts of just presences in unexpected places, where the encounter isn't really about interaction. It's more about just seeing something that shouldn't be there, or perceiving something that doesn't quite fit physical reality as you expected.
Right, the sense of something being off.
Yeah. So one story involved a listener's dad. His job was working nights, spraying pesticides in a graveyard, alone, among the headstones. One night, just out of the blue, he gets hit with this sudden, intense wave of terror. Pure fear. He spins around, looks behind him.
In a graveyard at night.
Yeah. And about 50 feet away, just sitting on a headstone, there's a guy. Just sitting there. And the detail they used was the 1,000-yard stare. Unfocused, distant, but somehow directed right at the dad.
The location itself, a graveyard at night, I mean, that's already inherently charged, isn't it? With that sense of the liminal, the unknown. So then to be the focus of an unblinking, unresponsive stare in that context from someone who doesn't react when you talk to them or warn them, it's a massive violation of just normal social rules, amplified hugely by the isolation in the setting. It feels almost predatory, even without any movement.
Exactly. The dad apparently tried talking to him. "Hey, you got to leave. I'm spraying chemicals. What are you doing here?" Nothing. Just this stone still figure staring. The account says he was so genuinely shaken by it, just this unresponsive presence in the dark among the graves, that he actually packed up and took the rest of the night off, which was apparently very unlike him.
Wow, I can believe it.
And then there's a much shorter account, but it's chilling in just how simple it is. Someone working down in the basement of a huge complex, going out for a smoke break. They walk towards the elevator, and they see a gentleman, described as wearing a red polo shirt, already waiting for it. As they get closer, the elevator door dings open, and the gentleman in the red polo walks inside. The worker reaches the elevator just like a second or two behind him, steps right in after him, and it's empty. Completely empty.
Yeah, that's maybe the purest form of that unsettling, unexplained presence thing. There's no build-up, no weird behavior beforehand, just a totally straightforward observation. Someone walked into this confined space, immediately followed by a flat contradiction of physical reality. He went in, but he's not there. It just directly challenges your basic understanding of how the world works, in a way that's really hard to just rationalize away.
Right, just gone. And finally, among the sources shared with us were these fragmented lines, just phrases. And they're chilling, really, in their potential context. Could be things people actually heard whispered. Or maybe just the kind of terrifying thoughts that surface when you feel really vulnerable and alone at night. They sort of articulate the raw fear that's underneath all these encounters.
The distillation of the...
Exactly. Listen to the sort of progression of menace in these potential statements. I'll just read a few. Sorry to frighten you, let's play a game. That mocking, manipulative kind of opening. If you move, I move, and if I reach you, I stab you. That creepy, rule-based physical threat again. Wondering where your coworker is, I cut her throat in the back. Just a cruel, isolating lie meant to cause despair. Oh, I see you want that phone to call for help. Taunting, aware of your only hope. I'm going to kill you before they can help you. Just explicit intent, emphasizing helplessness. And this last one. Don't cry here. I'll call for help for you. But when I hang up the phone, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
That's just ultimate sadistic manipulation, false hope, then the final threat.
Yeah, those phrases, whether they were actually spoken or just, imagined in that grip of fear, they really distill the psychological core of being cornered and powerless in the dark. They cover that whole spectrum, don't they? From mind games to explicit violence. And they highlight the specific fears that prey on someone when they're isolated and vulnerable, being found, not being able to get help, being completely at the mercy of someone else's malevolent will. They basically articulate the worst case scenarios that all these other unsettling encounters just hint at.
So yeah, we've told a few of these accounts today, shared by you, our listener, from people working alone during the night. And we've definitely seen some patterns emerge, haven't we? That profound, unsettling feeling from just silent observation. The way inexplicable disappearances mess with your head. The creepiness of distorting communication, that sudden switch to open menace. Just the sheer terror captured in those potential threats. These stories, they really remind us how vulnerable we can feel when the rest of the world is asleep, and how thin that veil can seem sometimes between the ordinary and the truly strange in those quiet hours.
Absolutely. These experiences, even though they happen in different places, different circumstances, they really underscore that psychological impact of isolation meeting the unexpected. They make us think about not just the external threat, maybe, but how that environment, the darkness, the solitude, amplifies our own internal fears and leaves us grasping for rational explanations that, well, sometimes just aren't there. It really does leave you wondering, doesn't it? How does being alone in the dark hours fundamentally change our perception of reality? And what deep-seated vulnerabilities does it expose when all the familiar structures of the daytime world are just gone?
It's a heavy thought. Well, thank you for sharing this really powerful source material with us. It's allowed us to tell these unsettling accounts together. And if you listening found these stories and our discussion compelling and maybe want to explore more content like this, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Kanye's Horror Docs. Your support really does help stories like these reach more listeners. Thank you for joining us for this look into the unsettling world of the night shift.